We're gonna
What is
go
it? Is it Freshspace?
Yeah.
yeah, the Freshspace.
Okay.
I always put the there because the is the one thing everybody removes.
Yeah.
So I'll
There
give
we
you
go.
that link when you can see the channel from there.
I got the notification. Ah, yes, we are indeed live. But now our host, where's our host is not here. Oh my lord.
No, we just continue the conversation.
Yeah.
We're just talking about general things today.
What did you guys say was the topic on what does it mean to be Christian? Or what's the thing?
No, just is that word loaded? What yeah, I guess you can say what does it mean to be, but that is a rabbit hole that is never ending. What does
I
it
would
Yeah,
mean?
that's
I would definitely say it's loaded. It's loaded because if you do anything and you say Christian shoe shop, you are guaranteed to lose business.
Like I don't want to advertise. I'm not gonna say where it is, but there's a panel beating place. So it's the name of the panel beaters, and then next to it says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And then obviously there's like a few other shops next to him, and that guy's shop is empty. I'm like, I know why. Take that scripture off my brother.
And alternatively, like I mean, I know in history they would say, "What's your Christian name?" But like,
Okay.
if you go to Fadil's panel shop, you that's saying it like Muslim panel shop, but it's not empty.
That's not empty. Yeah. You know, Fido's gonna get the job done. You know, you're not gonna know where the parts came from, but you know he's gonna get it done. I know a
It's
few
actually a
Fidos.
problem I see because like Woolworths here, obviously it's in the heart of Muslim sort of neighborhood, Roundabout East, those things. So if you go to Woolworths here and you check the normal steaks, you know that 2-pack sirloin, it's 100 rand and up. Just go to the halal section, same thing, like 20 rand less.
So you say you shop in the halal section.
No, I don't actually, because I don't want to take the chance. I'm
Why is
like,
this
but why
20%?
does it? It's the same cow, isn't it?
Nah, it's because they took the things out. You know, the demons. There's no demons in that meat. They saved 20 rand. Yeah, no, Vinesh, you were saying that it's a derogatory term. As were you talking about the origins of the word? Obviously.
yeah. I was talking about the origins of the term, and obviously I am more interested in how that word comes about, and actually, I know there's a lot of negative connotations to that. Um, I'm just of the belief. So, just in general, I think most believers or whatever, Christians, whatever you want to call it, like we get persecuted not because we necessarily believe in Jesus, but we get persecuted because we are stupid. We go or we're being stupid around about the faith. Like
Yeah.
and I think the word arise because the place, the city, I can't remember the city's Antioch was a city within a city, and there was nations who didn't like one another, and so Christianity was the first religion that actually brought people together, and so they had to sort like a name, so they Christian Christ, Christian, so I'm
Mm.
arguing from a point of view that it's as disciples, we are disciples of Christ, but from the world's perspective, we are Christians. And I think
Mhm.
we have adopted so much of the world and of the secular system that we are unable to make the distinction. And even for that the world are able to make a distinction between, who's a follower and who's not a follower. Because I think we have got this tendency, if I appease everybody, even in that sense, even appease the world, then hey, it's going to be fine. But that's not how it works. Those guys didn't come together because they appeased the world. The gospel actually set them free to be true to themselves. And the moment you're true to yourself, like the rest doesn't matter. Then you look beyond the normal. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer is a great friend. somebody I follow that talks about this idea that, like any connection, any church community that is that connects on common denominality or things we have an interest is born out of the flesh, because we connect on things that we agree on, but any community that is born out of the spirit it has to start with conflict. It has to start with arguments and with difference and with people figuring out things. Why? Because it's the physical and the spiritual trying to intermesh with one another. And so therefore any relationship that doesn't start off rocky or difficult should be questioned, or should not be trusted, because then that necessarily means that person is not there for the person or for the group, but for what he can gain out of that. And so in that sense, when I would agree with Lynn, the word Christian is loaded, but it's loaded in the sense of like it's not something that I as a believer or as a disciple should put on myself. Like the moment I put it on myself, then there's something wrong, I would argue. Yeah. But anyhow, so.
No, I like it. Obviously, like you said, when it's a good meeting, there's going to be conflict. Now, I would say I see a lot about what you said. I see very differently. For one, like for me, a gathering out of the flesh for me is fine, man. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I think there gets a lot of emphasis placed on why we meet and what the purpose is, And I agree with you there that it has become very different from what it was supposed to be. And with regards to what it's become, my question is, what changed, man? Do you guys think it was guys that got ideas that wanted to add? Or do you think it was just a natural progression of that the standard that is expected of us is too hard and we're going to try and chill it down? Is there a standard that's supposed to be kept? How am I supposed to be if I'm that? If others now start to say, okay, Tyron is a Christian, does that now put a certain criteria in my life that I have to live by? Or what do you guys think?
I have a comment there. I think
I
can.
No, there's no. I don't have an answer for it either. I'm just asking.
No, I mean, I have a comment. I think it's got to do with a one-word thing, and I think it's sort of the downfall of humankind, if you want to put it that way, and that's momentum. So, like, a car works because at some point there's an energy input, but it maintains that speed because at a certain point of momentum, it can it needs less energy input to realm. The problem is that humans don't like relying on relationship as the base of anything. So we'll sooner want to get to that point where it has sort of its own momentum. Like that. That's why churches become big. Once they're big, then a lot less maintenance to build. There's a lot more collective wanting to do one thing.
Certain fluidity, yeah.
So it means I don't have to put a whole lot of energy to sort of push it forward in a direction. Now, if you just reduce that to 4 people, it becomes exceptionally hard now to do any one thing simply because it's 4 people maybe wanting different things. And therefore, once you get over a certain bump of amount of people, you can kind of ignore the mass and say, this is the direction we're going to go. And then momentum becomes the thing that propels you. And it actually can propel you incorrectly. Very long and case in point. And I'm not saying that I have anything against the Catholic Church, but it still exists. I mean, how many branches and splits have happened from it, but it still exists, man. It's like, it doesn't even say, look, we see that and we've seen the beginning of it and the fruit of it. Hey, it makes sense. Let's give this up. So
you know why they're not giving it up. I know why.
So, I mean, and that's the thing is like something even in a business sense can be profitable, but actually horrible. But because it's profitable, we will continue to do it. It already has momentum. Facebook is a good example. It's
Oil.
one of the biggest curses of humanity, but it exists now, and it has this momentum that drives it all the time, and it's now out there. So if they stop, somebody else is going to take over in there and then make that money instead of them. So they rather just continue.
Okay.
Yeah. I also think, you know, I I think I was speaking to Lenny about it. Like Abraham Joshua Herschel is this thing about, you know, when you come to faith, you get convinced, that Jesus is real. Then you move to believe, and then you move to faith. So he would say like being convicted about something is different than believing in something, and then believing in something is different than having faith in something, because ultimately, like having faith in something incorporates all of who and what you are. It becomes a way of being. It becomes like who and what you are. And like Lenny was saying, like, and that requires a lot of relationship, and that requires spending time with people and not creating a system or processes in which or through which life can be facilitated. Like, and the moment life gets facilitated through external stuff, then like relationship is immediately in danger. And I think that's me and Autumn has that constant conversation. I'm like, you can't just assume stuff. You can't just, because you know me, that you can now just say these things. No, it doesn't work like that. Life progresses. Life is dynamic. Life is not stagnant. Marriage is not stagnant. It's dynamic. Relationships is dynamic. And I think one of my big issues is that we try to formalize dynamic. You can't formalize dynamism. It just happens. And I think, and in some cultures don't like change, but for me, it's like, no, it's inevitable. And again, like Jason Upton would say, like, hey, anybody who seeks love or want to be loved, should give up control, because, because in ultimately love forces you to give up control. And so I think the church's biggest problem is, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm not involved anymore, is because like, hey, you can't formalize something that is not fully comprehensible by the human mind. It is something you have to engage dynamically.
I'm with you 100%. I don't know I don't know if it's in a book that I'm listening to or if I read it on a podcast, but one of the dudes was saying that the human race is so young, man. You know what I mean? In comparison to all these evolutionists, so in comparison to how old the Earth is, the human race is so young, man. And you're saying it's like a 5-year-old trying to give you, no, this is what life is about, and this is what it's gonna be. Humanity is the same, man. Especially Christians, because we believe we have a connection to the Creator of all things. So we have one conversation with Him, and then we claim to know everything that He knows. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if God is who He is, then He knows beginning from end. He knows, everything. So how can you claim to say, okay, no, I know what this should be. I know what this can be. I know what this has to be. So when I hear people say things like, no, God can't, God won't, God will, God is always, God is, then I start to get nervous already, because for all you know, in 10 years' time, you're going to figure out God is some evil person that is just going to kill everybody. You don't know that. You're assuming based on the past, other people's past experiences with Him, that He is going to now react with you a certain way, man. Because there's many faces. I mean, He did that. He told guys, look, I want you to go in there and I want you to kill everybody there. Women, children, that was one of the instances. But we only focus on, no, He's gonna bless me and I'm gonna get forgiveness for sins. You know what I mean? So that's who He is. Nah, He's just a giver. He's just good. He's not bad. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't say no or whatever else. But it's hard for me to go, I have to believe that I'm a Christian, or I have a relationship with God based on what the church tells me. You know what I mean? So that's why I say I agree with you 100%. The minute an external factor is managing what you're doing with your time, how you're spending your time, how you're thinking, your opinion on stuff. That's when you should know that you're in danger when you use words like, at my church, you know what I mean? That kind of comment, no, my pastor says, then I already go, my friend, it's time to run. But how did we get to church, man? We're talking about Christianity. Yeah. How did we get to church?
Aren't they one thing?
No. As like he said in the beginning, it was this. Now it's that. A Christian person was considered part of the church, like the church. It was never a building of people or an organization. Correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen.
Yeah, so church is ecclesia, which means called out one. So ecclesia can be anything. It can be a bunch of philosophers. Ecclesia was just a bunch of disciples, who came together, and I think that was church. And in that sense, I think being a disciple and being part of the church, ecclesia, should not be seen as two different things, or in a dichotomous point of view. I think they are deeply integrated. Because I think
Dichotomous. Ooh.
Dim man. Guys, we got a clever man here.
Biological.
Say it, bro. We need some of those words on this show, bro. Go for it.
Because I think one has to do with the communal aspect, and another one has to do with the personal aspect. Because what happens, so we get so focused on church, and then on Sundays when we're together, like we're this one person, and during the week we're this different person because we've created separation between the two. But I'm like, no, there isn't a separation between the two. Like I am because you are, like, and that sort of Ubuntu is like I am because you are, like because I'm part of a community, and because I'm part of people who love and care for me, and we have conversations, I get formed through that, and therefore when I move away, I'm not alone, even though I am alone. Like that's why Paul in Romans 7 talks about, now that we belong to Christ, we belong to one another. And I think that was one of my big issues as well, and still are like okay, it's fine to say that we are church, but what does it mean? Like, that does it mean that we are one on a Sunday? But when I find myself in a difficult situation and I ask for help, and like, hey, I need to go to the board meetings, and okay, but we're not one anymore. So I would argue like those two things should not be seen differently, because we are not separate people. We are not like we are not separate. I first of all find my sense of rest and sense of being in Christ, and because I have a relationship with God, and out of that, everything else flows. Okay. I don't always believe that I'm a Christian and then I'm this. No, I have a relationship with Christ. I'm a follower of Jesus, and out of that, I live my life. So yeah, that's what I would argue.
So now we know there's at least one follower of Christ on this podcast.
So yeah, you've got a ripe feel for evangelism here, bro. Just go for it. I feel
no need to evangelism anybody, because it's not my job. I think evangelism is we fooling ourselves thinking that we're doing something for God as if He's not been doing that. So I have no need for that.
I like that. Officially.
Yeah, but.
Oh, here we go, Daryl. Evangelist Daryl.
No, there's. I was gonna say but you throw the word corporate in there, and it changes the dynamic. And you also have to think about. It's maybe easier for a Christian to exist in a space like a church if they understand that the church is based on people that are dichotic.
No, I hear what you're saying, but that's exactly my problem.
But aren't they coming to the church to find synergy?
No, I hear you, but the bigger you get, the easier it becomes for people to actually hide.
Yeah,
that's my problem. It's the fact that people hide. Like Christianity, unfortunately, has become a form of escapism because people don't want to deal with reality.
Wow.
We don't want to deal with reality. And so Glennon Doyle would say, addicts are just people who don't want to deal with reality. And that is unfortunately the truth.
No,
Like,
I-
if I was
Look,
saying-
it's a bit
Here's
more
the thing,
nuanced than that. It's a,
I know,
you need
I
to
know.
be careful about how you frame that.
I know about the argument I'm making. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, it's easier for people just to sit on a Sunday morning in a church and listen to a pastor instead of them going on, like, in the morning, evening, sitting with scripture themselves and reading through the Bible themselves. I know of a lot of people personally that has never read through the Bible. I know of people who's busy studying theology that has never read through the whole scripture.
It
All
sounds
I'm
about like
saying-
every pastor I know.
Exactly. So
I thought Daryl was gonna say that now.
all I am saying, like, I'm saying, like, I have no issues with big churches or whatever. I'm just
I've
saying
got big issues with big churches.
one of my issues is like that
Small
becomes a
issues.
form of escapism where people hide away. And I want to use another very complicated word, but I'm not going to use that because
Use it,
then
man.
I
I
but
got my
anyhow.
dictionary here. I got it here. So just
What's
use
the
it.
big word? What's the big word?
Huh?
Hey, Google.
Okay.
It's called therapeutic deism.
Oh, okay.
So we
Yeah.
use the faith, we use our worship and lifting up our hands and everything as a form of therapy. So it's explained there where we are. So they've started me to start leading worship and stuff. So I told Brad, like, hey, I feel no need to invite people to come and join. I'm gonna start singing and I'm gonna start whatever. If they want to come, they can come. Because here's the thing: I don't want to create this culture or idea that worship or praying is dependent on one person. No,
good.
that's
Because
not the
once-
case. Because
once
when
you
I
start
want to walk away and be able to say that thing is going to go on because it's not built around a personality.
I was just gonna say because once you start it, then it becomes your thing. Like we're just gonna if he doesn't do it, then nobody can.
Yeah, so and that's my thing. I'm just like, no, I feel no need for that because I was saying like to a lot of people in San was, hey, you must remember when I got here, I already had all the faith stuff. So you're trying to teach somebody who's already lived this stuff and has seen more crazy biblical stuff that you've ever seen in your life. So please just
Okay.
But you see, here's where the complication comes in, and I think that I asked the question, and we all see the results over history. Is that let's say we go into that book, God's Generals, no? So we know Smith Wigglesworth, William Branham, what's the
Edwards.
other? Jonathan Edwards.
Who was a slave owner.
There's another one. That did the AFM church.
So
What
was
his name?
Abram. Abram was also a slave owner. What's your point?
Oh,
Who was the founder
That
of
was celebrated in the Bible.
Feliz, you would know the founder of AFM.
guy.
I know you're talking about.
Isn't it also Edwards?
John G. Lake.
John D. Lake.
That's it.
It's the lake
I know a few names, guys. Watch out.
in
He was actually South African. He came to South Africa at least.
He came South Africa. Yeah.
No, he's not. Yeah, he came to South Africa.
And then his
Guys,
first
don't
wife
talk about
died.
AFM now. My wife grew up in AFM. I'm joking.
Solid
So-
faith mission.
The thing is like,
Solid fake mission.
and I'm thinking that Jonathan Edwards was the one in Wales.
No. In America.
Wasn't Bremen in Wales?
No.
Brennan was Wales. No.
No.
I
No,
hope this is
Brennan
my
was the
dad.
Bible
We're gonna
guy.
pull
He's the
him
Bible
in.
guy.
Yeah, he's the one that taught that women are the seed of Satan.
Wow. That man was onto something.
So
Hey, you're a married man. You must be careful what you say, especially online.
I am one person everywhere. My wife knows how I feel. Let's move on.
So,
you
Hey,
will
that's
soon be
right
one
there.
person on your own.
yeah, one on your own.
Nailed it.
I'm one in
I'm only-
myself.
I'm only making a joke because she can't hear what we're actually talking about.
That's what you think.
Oh yeah, this is live now.
Yeah, that's what you think.
I love
just
she's
edit
busy
that part
watching
out.
it and listening there.
She's
But
editing.
no. Anyway, so what I was sort of alluding to was that it wasn't even 10 years after they left Earth that whatever movement they had, it was dead and gone. And that I mean, I know it sounds sort of a spiritual statement, but it's like it proves that they were not building it on what was the true foundation of everything, I suppose. It means that on some level there was a lot of them in the thing,
Yeah.
or
But
people were looking at them.
But it was Moses all over again, I think, man. If I read all of those stories, I hear the same thing happening. These guys, they eventually start some kind of school, or they get guys around them that they want to teach or mentor. But those guys are more like, no, man, we don't want all of that lifestyle stuff. Just show us how to do the miracles. You know what I mean? And in them not being able to say like, look, I can't teach you how to do the stuff, but I can teach you who gave me the stuff. I can introduce you to him. And in that process, people see, okay, these guys actually sacrifice a lot to get what they have. And in that process, they lose a lot of people, and people go, okay, you just keep doing it, we'll follow you. How much money do you need? How much this do you need? How much that do you need? And obviously, we know how most of their lives end. It actually starts to end in ruin because the pressure, it's like celebrity life, the pressure becomes too much for them.
I obviously
So,
think like that point then leads to an interesting question is then how did like the first generation disciples or people that walked with Christ got it right to do what they did? Because then because now it becomes a dynamic. What was the dynamic there? And again, just want to say I do not believe that the 12 disciples were the only disciples or what we would call apostles. I think there were women. I think there's at least 4 women in the Bible that is clearly apostles by Paul's definition. Anyhow, I'll get in trouble for that. But
Here goes the
Not
male
with women.
feminist. Male
Um,
You
feminist.
won't get in trouble with women.
no, I think
You're gonna-
Junior's what we call Junior. She was, But my point is, it's like on Lenny's point, like so. After 10 years after they died, their movements died out. But how did like guys? How did the 12 got it right? And like when you think of Paul, so for argument's sake, wrote 10 letters, which he didn't. Actually, wrote just 7. But when you look at him, so I was listening to a secular scholar, and he was saying, if I were to be honest with myself, that all major reformations and transformations and wars and amazing stuff that happened in the world was deeply rooted, for instance, within Paul. A lot of how the world thinks is deeply Christian or rooted within Paul, even though Josephus and all these other guys wrote a lot of stuff, but nobody had so much impact on the world than Paul. Even until today, the book of Romans, for instance, is still one of those, books that still that still people like get struggle a lot with. But all I'm saying, all I'm asking then, what was the dynamic that Jesus communicated with amongst his disciples, like that he transferred to himself, that he transferred himself to them, that 12 were able to spread the gospel all over the world, because something must have happened there.
I've got an opinion. I don't know how factual it is. It's
Yeah.
just from my brain and how I see things. For me, I think it was simple actually. Hey guys, this is what I came to do. Watch me do it. Okay, look, I'm gonna go now. You guys keep doing it. That's for me. That's all it was, man.
Mm.
Paul comes on the scene. Whether you meet him, he meets him in Damascus, and then he goes away for this. I think it's 2-3 years, and when he says he went into the different whatever's of
14
heaven, right?
years.
How many years?
14.
Now look at that, right? So in there, he says he met with Jesus all the time, and Jesus explained to him the whole thing. And now he comes back to the other guys, and yeah, they're saying the same thing, right? So what does that mean? Okay, they both then spoke to the same person, and it wasn't this thing of, I'm gonna tell you how to do it. I'm not gonna do it, but I want you to do it. I used to do it, in my young days when I got saved. I used to stand on the street and I preached on the streets, but now I drive a Merc, and now you have to do it. Okay, cool. And this is how you do it. I don't do it, but you're gonna do it. We all got different things. My thing is to be in charge. Your thing is to do all the work. Do you understand? So I think that's where the differences happen, man. Because these guys could see how Jesus lived. They lived the same way. And all their disciples lived with them and saw the same thing. Somewhere along the line, I think it got a little watered down with the added doctrines, with the written word, with this is the decided book, and everybody must just believe these things. On top of that, they never had a Bible, man. They never had a book to go to. They had old scrolls from the Jewish days. The A lot of the Greek converts, a lot of them just they winged it, man. They had Paul's letters. They had other people that they could ask. So I think that's, in my opinion, the fact that there wasn't so many rules, and they could just really wing it and trust their instincts. I mean, I'm sure they made lots of mistakes, but they also did a lot of good, man. Where I think in our time, when with these guys, we idol worship very quickly, or hero worship. I mean, not say idol worship. I should say hero worship. And once there's a hero, then he's the guy that can do it, man. And then you find, fast forward 100 years later, pastors pulling up, going, God decided He's gonna do something through me, and then it's 10 years and He hasn't done anything yet. You know what I mean? It's that thing, man. One day the move is gonna come or whatever, blah blah blah. And now everybody's waiting for revival, where these guys who happened upon it, I'd say, they never told anybody until it happened, man. Even though they were praying for it, like a guy like Bremen, he prayed for it for years, but he didn't tell people, hey guys, it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? It happened when it did, man.
But
My
but
opinion.
they are gonna jump again on the momentum bandwagon. Momentum gives you distance because let's, for argument's sake, say the disciples didn't get the traction of numbers so quickly. They didn't add 3,000 there. They'd have to rely on putting a lot more energy in all the time. And I know momentum doesn't sound like a spiritual concept, but I mean, the thing is, like,
Tell that to TD Jakes.
I'm the only non-married one here, but I would assume that if you stop putting energy into your relationship, and I mean effort or whatever, soon it's gonna die. I mean, though technically you would be physically married and the things of marriage would continue to happen. I mean, like, you'd still make breakfast or whatever, but that doesn't mean that the relationship would increase. And I think the tendency to, because if we look at the early church, we think, how did they survive without the Bible? Well, they had a relationship with God. They were kind of forced to. It also put a target on their back. Like, if you decided to come out and say, I'm a Christian, the likelihood of someone killing you for that was a possibility. And Soren Kierkegaard was always wrote about that. That was his thing. He was saying that, nowadays, and this is like 200-300 years ago, it's easy to become a Christian and impossible to understand what it is. Those days, it was easy to understand what it was meant to be a Christian, but very difficult to become one. And that's sort of the kind of, the church really grows when we have the difficult to become one. And then you, like, it's like when you're in war, you don't think hard about theology. You just need to know, is this the truth or isn't it? And now we sort of look, okay, now we have the Bible, so the tendency to believe is, I can just give you this book instead of living with you and showing you who God is. Because, this is God in a book.
Yeah.
Or when you come to a person and say, listen, I feel like my life's not right, show me Christ. Okay, come to church, no? We've got a 9 o'clock service, and we've got a Monday class and discipleship, and there's a baptism class.
Yeah.
And then, but you've got so much classes that you can start the Indian nation. I mean, but I mean, you see what I mean? It's like, there's where momentum causes something which actually is good, but it can turn out to be bad, because what we really needed was to pass person to person.
Oral
And this
tradition,
book
yeah.
actually becomes a hindrance to the grand scheme, because next to the book is not just the concept of a book, it's now the interpretation of it also, because now we're trying to pass. Because if you were trying to say, okay, stop today, 2020, let's say you in South Africa, let's try and encapsulate the entire culture, write it in a book, and people 500 years from now must understand what South Africa is like. Then it also depends who's writing it. Is it a white person? Is it a white Afrikaans person? Is it a
Oh
colored
my
person?
lord, that people will laugh them sick, bro.
But I mean, so let's say the word lekker comes in there. What sort of context is that for the person 500 years that is removed from this culture reading that word? So I think that the Bible written down is actually a massive hindrance to somebody actually meeting Christ
Yeah.
for themselves.
My parents are busy with their master's degree now, so they have to do a dissertation. So my mom is studying. Her dissertation is on the history of the church, or the history of the Bible. Sorry, and
Theology.
she, yeah. Sorry, you can't choose your family. So she,
Oh, that's why you're so chirpy.
yeah, personal experience. You see, oral tradition. So they've now hit this thing about Constantine, and obviously they were given a story about it. And look here, this is what happened. And now that they're actually doing research themselves, they're discovering a few other names that they weren't told about, the Tyndale and Henry and all the other kings. And now they're going, what's this so for sick of? You know what I mean? Because not that they're not sure about God or the Bible, but they're starting to realize that there were so many other characters that played such an important role in the choosing of what goes in and what's important for life. And up until then, they were told no, Constantine got saved and God changed his life, and every guy that was in there was spirit led and da. But the more they go into the history now, they're going, how much of this can we actually base our lives on? It's helpful maybe, but how much of it is? And now add on to that what you're saying. Now it's like, is the thing true, man? Not the
Well, the King
I was
James
just saying,
version should actually be the William Tyndale's version.
the 1611. Yeah, no. But how many revisions were there after that? Man?
Well, they kind of killed Tyndale and then sort of said, hey,
They're
but it
like,
wasn't such a
thanks,
bad idea to
thanks.
translate it into English.
Yeah.
But okay, it's too late
Give it
now.
to the king.
It's too late now, Willie. But thanks, man. Thanks for the idea. They didn't even pay his family intellectual property royalties and nothing.
Yeah, I don't even know it existed.
Yeah, it's the day. So I'm
Yeah,
just
but I
asking the question, man. I'm just
yeah, but
saying, can you take everything that you know to be true from them? And I agree 100% with Lenny saying, take the book out of the way. Then you're really going to see who are the ones that are following, man. Because then they'd have to follow a voice in their head. Then real faith comes into play because take myself, I'm not going to talk for anybody else. Take myself and say, there's a lot of voices in my head. You know what I mean? So now you have to trust. Now real belief comes into play. And the problem with that is going to be, it's going to be trial and error until you figure it out, man. Unless
Mhm.
you have like one of those miraculous experiences, then fine, go for it, bro. But I'd be I'd be in shit, man. The Bible is still a help for me. You know what I mean? I don't like I can't I know because of what I know now. I can't base every little line on my life on every little line. But it's still helpful in many decisions. I can still go to it for wisdom, man, because it's still a great book. So yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about it. That's why
I
when I
think
hear them say they're gonna declare the Bible hate speech, I'm like, oh yes, then we're gonna see. Then we're gonna see. Then it's
they
Book of
should actually
Eli
get it.
vibes. The guys who are gonna memorize the Bible, they're gonna be the kings, bro.
I think, and I think that's exactly one of the like with a lot of discussions I have with a lot of people. It's like so the, the Bible is too monotheological or too monocultural, because like the people who interpret it, is mainly white. So we must just be honest with that. So so we read the Bible then as a
Sorry, say
single.
again. I didn't catch that last part. You you
Huh?
you 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 auto tuned here by me. The
Right.
Bible.
The
I just
Bible
heard
is
white. Sorry.
So most of the Bible is written and interpreted by white people from a Western perspective.
Oh,
So,
okay, like that.
which then ultimately mean it's monotheological. It's written from a monocultural perspective. Then
Oh,
in
you mean translated by white and
yeah, translated
yeah,
and
sorry, okay,
developed
cool.
and all those whole process,
Mhm.
which is problematic because then it creates this single story, and there's a danger in the single story. But because now we read the scripture as a single story, and the reality of the matter, it is not a single story. Um, and because now what happens, because that's how we treat one another. Like when we look at a person of color, when we look at the white person, when we look at a person of dark skin, then we already had a certain story made up in our minds of who and what that person are based on certain parameters, which is problematic for me, because that means we miss the person and we miss who God is if we say we are believers. And Genesis, I'm a bit of a Bible guy, but like I think
We all have our flaws in life.
You say I'm not a
we
biblicist. I'm not a biblicist.
but in the same way, I think like you can't really understand God or the image of God or Imago Dei, whatever you want to call it, by just looking at a man, because the male is not it's not the definition of what it means to be created in the image of God. You have to look at male and female. God created them. So this patriarchal nonsense, I don't. That's why I'm like, no, that's nonsense. And so that
I'm in
now,
on that because I'm a guy. If I was a girl,
so
I'd be with
now
you.
it creates this thing, because now it moves into today into rape culture, gender issues, and all those kind of things. Who determines that? The male determines that. Why? Because we have a theology that says, hey, the image of God is only portrayed by male. No, that's nonsense. That's a
Do you
single
know?
perspective. That's a single story. So again, in any community of faith or any people that says that together and there's not a willingness to embrace difference and diversity, I am out of the door. That's simple.
I hear you. That's a good opinion to have. But
A male feminist.
yeah, it's difficult, man. I have okay. I'll tell you a story. I've got a friend. He believes in he is okay. He calls himself a true Hebrew Israelite, right?
Oh my
Aye.
gosh.
So he believes. You guys know what I'm talking about,
Yes, sir.
right? You guys are laughing already. You see, you can't because you can't tolerate difference. So no, I'm gonna give you the basis of his story, and I'm gonna explain what I mean. So he believes that Jacob was black and Esau was white, right? So because of that, anybody who's got melanin on their skins, they're Israelites. The rest of you are heathens, Gentiles, Amalekites, Jebusites, Moabites, whatever else, right? So because of that, his theory is you can't say that my sins are forgiven, but you let a woman teach in the church. Do you understand? So you can't say my sins are
How
forgiven.
does that reason?
It's the same book.
How does it compute?
I can. That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna get there. I said I'll explain. It's the same book, man. So in the book, there's nothing that changes with regards to those things God says. But I'm fine with accepting wholeheartedly what God says about my sin. But I don't accept what God wholeheartedly says about matriarch and patriarch. Do you understand? So as I'm saying, it's tricky to say I believe wholeheartedly in the Bible and still have an opinion about those things. I don't know if you guys know Hotep Jesus. I don't know if you say Hotep Jesus. He's like a influencer.
Mm.
He's a black guy got rich. That's the best way I can put
He
it.
was
Right?
on a Bitcoin podcast somewhere.
Yeah, nah, but he's got a few good things to say. But he released a book now called The True Masculine Form, man, where he talks about the things that you are talking about. And he's saying, please, these are his words, not mine. Please, I don't believe what he's saying. I'm just throwing a span in the works. So his thing is, no, why all these things happen is because women can't fall into their place. Now a man feels like he has to put her in her place. So now I want to throw this to you, man. In a culture where we say we believe in a God that is real and we got to know him through the scriptures, how can you not believe in the patriarchal leadership? Maybe not. Let's not say law of women or less. I don't want to say that, but you
Yeah, but
can't
that's
deny.
essentially what you're saying.
Wait, no, but you can't deny that that there is a male leading role, man, within the scripture. That's what I'm saying. I'm not
God the
saying
Father.
Vanesh, you have to go to autumn and tell her. No, I'm not. Please, I'm not doing that. I'm saying you can't deny that in the word, in the scripture, that there is a thread. Let's use that word of male dominance, man. And I am agreeing with you with regards to who wrote it. I mean, we were talking about that 1611 King James. In there, they've got other words for slave there. The word for slave is negro. The word for slave is black guy. The word for slave is it's like a word that translates to the guy that looks like clay. Do you know what I'm saying? And as time went by, there were lots of things that changed about it. We changed the words, we changed this and that. So I'm saying, has culture also changed our perspective because females feel they need a voice, right? I'm not saying you don't need a voice. Women, come on, speak
What's the
up.
name of the book again?
The I'll tell you now, man. He tweeted about. Go to his
The
Twitter. He tweeted
masculine
about it.
shape.
The true masculine form or the true form of masculinity, something like that.
I'm
So I'm just asking, as a
no.
Christian Bible
I hear
believer.
you, but I'm like, on your earlier point, I am like I'm of the belief you can. The fact that I wholeheartedly believe in something doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean I don't have to disagree with that.
Okay.
Because then again, that's creating levels. That's again dichotomy. That's creating separation where it isn't necessary. Because if I wholeheartedly believe in something and there's not space to disagree with it, and that means I'm a robot, and that means something like then I'm a robot. And like from
Sounds
like
right to me.
so like I did a massive study, like for instance, on the Book of Lamentations. Like the Book of Lamentations actually gives us the freedom to disagree and to be angry with God. Because why? Because we have got this thing, or people has got this thing that my problem is too big for God, or that my issues are too big for God. And because it is too big for God, I cannot take it to God. Hey, what the hell? He created you. He created hell for that matter. So who am I to think that he's not big enough to handle my stuff? So therefore I'm saying there's a lot of stuff I disagree with.
Okay.
But that doesn't remove the fact that I believe in it. It is actually because I wholeheartedly believe in it that I can disagree with that. And again, I hear you thing on the my leadership thing.
Yeah, no, I was
Agreed.
just asking because.
But now that's why my earlier point. We now have to and that's my thing with my black friends, my color friends, is like you have to go and sit with scripture and reinterpret the text and reimagine the text, because most of the Bible about how we have it today, especially in the West, is been written and interpreted and translated from a white Western perspective.
Okay.
So if you go and study the text exactly, it's like it's not male. So Eve is not created as just a by thing. No, Eve is created as an equal, as somebody to create with him, to lead with him.
Okay.
So, but
Not
when you
just a
read the
conduit.
text, it doesn't give that idea because of all the stuff. And again, because we don't make the effort to really just go sit down and read it, because it's easy for us to just accept, hey, because that theologian said that, or because that person said that, or because the way the Bible is interpreted, it's okay. No, it's not okay. That's what, and that's my thing. And I even think you can't say you love and respect women, but when it comes to decision making and when it comes to things that is of importance, then they are no longer important. Like somebody like Martin Luther King would not have existed, or his name wouldn't be known if it wasn't for women, because 80% of the movement consisted of women. And so I can go on.
Yeah.
So all I'm just saying, like, no, like we have to go sit down, reread the text, reinterpret the text. And yes, culture has unfortunately impacted that.
I'm saying get rid of the text, man. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yes, I hear you, but
Because that's
I'm
gonna be
actually
another
like,
5 years of my life gone.
no, I'm actually saying that there's actually a lot of life and a lot of hope in the text if we
Okay.
decided to make it our own.
Mm.
Because we haven't decided to make it our own.
Because then I have to lemon
So
desire.
ultimately what we have to recognize that as first is that the Christianity and the gospel in the way that it has been presented to us originally has been presented as the religion of our oppressor. And we therefore still hold to that, to what they brought
Yeah,
about. No, we have to
I'm still
go
in
and
there.
separate the two. It's like, therefore, Christianity is not, yes, it is a religion of my oppressor, but I've made it mine. And still, a lot of people live with and do Christianity from the perspective of as a religion of my oppressor. And therefore, if the white person didn't say it, it is not true. It's like at the school there where my wife works. Hey, like where the parent says, I would rather let a white person teach my kids than a colored person. I'm like, no, that's problematic for me. Now
That's
that is
stupid. Yeah.
problematic for me.
That
So
is not
that's all.
problematic. That's stupid.
So here's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, the country was taken with the gun in the hand and the Bible in the one hand. That's the
Okay.
thing. As people
Yeah.
of color and black people, we have to just like, no, we have to make the difference. And they'll say, okay, now we have to go and do the hard work. And that's to go sit down, just to read the text, just without being still enslaved.
Okay.
I would think we're still enslaved because
Yeah.
because of the bit of freedom that it gives us. But
Yeah.
actually, we are tangled here on top. The banana is tangled here in our face, but in the meantime, they're killing us and stealing our land. Sorry,
Fine.
activists.
No, no, go
Very
for it, bro.
strong.
Go for it.
But we need to rewind there. But look, I think many years ago I went down a rabbit hole, and when you go down a rabbit hole, you find quite a few things, and it's like searching YouTube, a video on YouTube, and suddenly 3 hours later, you don't really know why you started,
Yeah.
but
Or
and
TikTok.
Yeah.
well, TikTok is
Definitely.
more like a one eat pony, but the problem with YouTube is because it has collected data on you so much. The sidebar
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have various topics. So I don't know about you, but I end up in multiple tabs, and then
I,
sort
I,
of
I'm not that
because
bad.
I want to say, hey, what's the next song, but I still want to get to that topic also.
Okay.
That's sort of how my brain works. So
I'm like,
my thing, what I came across is this sort of podcast called The Bible for Normal People, and for me, I think the first time the Bible actually made sense for what it is, and their approach is you need to understand that people of the time why they were writing it,
yeah,
and the problem is that we assume that they had some capacity as humans that we don't. And when you start doing some proper research, you discover that they're actually just as human as you and I. They didn't have some extra capacity and extraordinary powers. And we sort of infer that because we read thousands of years after the fact that, I mean, there was a whole lot less humans on Earth. For one, um, it was very difficult for information to spread then. So we it's hard for us to fathom an environment where if you're going to grow up in a town, that is probably where you're going to remain for the rest of your days. If you decide to travel, it was a life-threatening thing, so the likelihood of you coming back wasn't very high. Um, so the one thing that I sort of learned along the way was that they didn't have a context for what they were writing. And the same like today, we consider most of our life mundane. We certainly don't write about it unless you are a journaler or a writer that's going to find something remarkable about writing. And even though, from what I understand from people, like this one guy said, look, it's easy to write 1,000 words. He just writes 1,000 every day. And then it decides afterwards whether it's worth keeping or not. But that's someone who's actually determined to write a book. But in general, we are not going to document our life because we don't consider documentable. And equally so, when the Israelites eventually sat down and wrote their story of history, wasn't when the going was good. It wasn't, hey, we got time, let's sit and write about this. It was because they were put into captivity and they said, hey, we might lose who we are here. Let's write it down, and this is the people of God now.
Yeah.
And then that's another thing. They are the only people that say, we are the chosen people of God. Who told them? No, God told us. And you telling us that you are the chosen people of God because God told you alone and nobody else. Okay. I suppose that's how it goes.
But it sounds like Christianity also. Christians also like that. He chose me, guys.
But the thing is more that there's a existential sort of approachment. Like, because we are here, this is what is, let's write that down. So there's a term that they came up with, monolatry, like not idolatry, but monolatry. So in the land of many gods, they chose one. But they acknowledge that there's other gods, but our one is our one.
He's the one. Yeah.
He's the king.
So
technically they couldn't say he's the one because that would assume that he's the only God that counts and everything else is nothing.
Yeah.
So they acknowledge that there's other gods and whatever, but that doesn't mean that there were.
Yeah.
They are writing from their perspective of their understanding. And when the enemy was vanquished, they assumed God gave us the victory.
Yeah.
But they went out and fought. God didn't say go out and fight.
Yeah, but I think I definitely agree with that. And I think like that's why it's so important for us to not just take things because and therefore it's dangerous when somebody say the Bible said. I'm like, no, that's a dangerous statement to make. That is
No, it's true.
Because like letters were like, I know for the New Testament, it's because the community was so spread over. Paul would write one letter that would be circulated to a lot of people, not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't get to anybody. You know, like the church of Antioch was 100,000 strong, but they were like Antioch wasn't small, so it was all over the place. And I think therefore for me it's like, so when people think, oh, but this scripture says in that, I'm like, oh, what? I should just get away from.
Imagine that letter gets to the one place and they only read it once in the gathering and then they move it on. How much of that could you catch in that one reading, man? How helpful were those letters anyway?
And here's the thing. People were not highly literate.
Okay.
People were not literate, so it wasn't like it was read. No, somebody stood there and read it to the whole group. It wasn't like it was given to like today, like where each of us have a Bible. No, because illiteracy was big. Paul and a lot of the people that walk with him were literate. So therefore, for us to like assume all the other stuff that we know, and like, so specific people is given the letter to, you know, like even Paul as well. You know, even though he was a Pharisee, he wasn't a very good writer. A lot of the stuff that was dictated by somebody else. So therefore, I think back on Lily's point, like we must be careful, like not just to take stuff and say like this is it. Therefore, it's a communal thing. It's something that all of us engage with, you know, and you know, then we arrive to a conclusion.
I like that approach too.
Well, my stance is more that the Bible should never theoretically have ever ended. Because we have sort of this determination that, okay, well, since they wrote about the end, that's the end.
Yeah. Yeah, but the problem is like the problem is that the New Testament only contains 72 years of the New Testament. It only contains the first century.
I didn't know that.
But that's where everything went wrong afterwards.
Interestingly enough, a lot of the stuff that Jesus prophesied actually came. So he would say about the temple, and when that whole thing at the cross where they had to choose between Barabbas, and Jesus. When it says like by your blood, even if it means by our blood, the people are like, no, it's 70 AD, the temple fall. Like stuff like that. There's actually a lot of stuff that came to pass in that. Like the book of John's 1 to 4 were all written after the first century. They were written in the first century. Like late 90s, early 100s, which is a whole other thing in itself. But I think just by summarizing what we've been talking about the whole time, I think the issue is like the momentum that has been developed for the sake of expediency has actually killed the church, and because we have developed systems and processes to make it easy, because we have created this expert Christianity. See, like if you're not a theologian, if you haven't studied, if you haven't done, then you know nothing. And I'm like, yeah. Isn't like Peter and all those guys who actually had brains. They were not. No, they were normal people. And so we didn't read the text from the perspective like I have to have a degree. No, the Bible was written by normal people, so I can read it as a normal person and understand it as a normal person, and then make deductions and apply certain stuff in my life. Not deep.
Awesome. Hey, Vinesh, you said you're going to be quiet.
Simple enough for volunteers.
I love it.
Simple enough for a volunteer. But here's the part where this volunteer has to leave you guys. Because I actually have a life and I have to make food and stuff.
Yo, it's like a low blow saying we don't have
lives. We also got lives. We just block out the time.
I'm not saying.
We just plan better, Vinesh. We plan better than you do.
I essentially run my whole house. So sing that my wife works. Because I actually have no issues
acting like
with,
she works too.
I actually have no issues
male feminist right there.
I have no issues following female leadership.
Nice. You go for it.
I don't like this idea that Lindley calls me a male feminist or whatever the thing is.
A male feminist.
I feel like
what other you're a feminist, but I mean you're in a male body, so a male feminist.
That's a very derogatory statement you're making to me, and which is very judging towards women, I feel.
Okay.
I'm gonna say my comment. Have a cause, don't become the cause.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. No,
I
think
saying
you're just joking, man. That's good.
No, but I like to press that button. I hit the drum a lot.
As I know you're not the first person who does that.
Like, I'm very passionate about that. I am fully converted.
Exactly why I hit the drum.
Women need more guys to stand up for them. Because I'm not.
No. Women need to stand up correctly. And I'm not saying I'm deciding what is correct. I'm just saying that when we go on the wrong road, there's the knee-jerk reaction to pull it right. But the feminist thing started like a few decades ago, man. I think sometimes you need to get off that horse. Not you specifically, but as a feminist movement, there's a point where it becomes destructive, man.
Yeah,
and it's not helping the cause.
If you do want to call me something, no. If you do want to call me something, not a feminist, because feminists started where they fight for the rights of white women. Let's be clear on that. It's a white woman thing.
Okay, so now what are we going to call you?
I'm a womanist.
Okay, cool.
I support the womanist movement.
Okay, cool. Because women are feminine. It's fine.
We are creating a movement of our own now, a womanist movement.
Yeah, but that is true. Eh? Look at the Rhodes Must Fall thing. We know one of the girls who started.
No, the womanist movement is a thing, people. It's about
this can't be a thing, man.
Peace
like
must fall.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
Rhodes
is
must fall.
It started with Rhodes Must Fall.
Rhodes as in Rhodes, the university.
No, the statue.
Protest in
Oh.
the 2015
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So
No,
one of the
like the
girls,
womanist thing.
Cecil Rhodes, one of the girls who started it. She says a year later they looked and they were like, "But we stopped 8 months ago. Why is everybody still going on with this thing?"
Momentum.
And that's what it is.
I'm just saying I support
Womanist.
my people.
I'm gonna Google this thing. If it's a real thing, I have to stop it, man. Because just be what you are, who you
Go
are, and
research,
where you are.
research womanist
Yeah.
womanist movement. It started by a black woman.
Was she woke?
Was
It
she
actually
woke?
got born out of the Black Lives
She
Matter
was
movement.
woken up.
But anywho,
Okay.
people,
Yeah, I know.
this
Maybe
is the
that
part
can be
where
our topic next time. Movements.
what?
The problem
Oh
with
no!
movements.
That's no bad.
We only got an hour. We can only say so much in an hour. It won't go on for long.
Yeah, I mean, momentum only lasts so long.
Not with the tangents. You people tend to go on.
I just ask questions.
And now I am here and I love my tangents.
Nice. No, go for it.
My wife sometimes just has to tip me on the head and say, like, hey, chill down.
No,
So
then you
very
must tell her,
clear
hello,
about
hello. Ek is Imani. I'm the man here. You can't tap me. You understand? Look how my wife's laughing at the back here.
So
Give him
you're just
nothing
saying,
tonight. Let him go to bed dry. Let him go to bed
I'm the patriarch.
yeah.
There's services for that. There's services for that, cuz. You
Yeah.
can't use that.
Matriarch.
Womanist is to feminist as purple is to lavender.
Derivative.
I suppose
Derivative.
it's a bit more nuanced because
Urban
lavender
Dictionary.
isn't purple, but it's slightly
is-
purple.
it
It's
is
got
purple.
purple, but it's
It's
a
like
shade
white
of
and
purple.
off-white. What the
It's a shade. It's a shade. It's the same thing, but it's a shade. Because but I understand what you're saying. You don't want to be associated with the feminist thing because it wasn't all inclusive. I get that. And then they come with a new word, but now they're like saying, but men are junk and women are like better.
No,
And
that's not what they're saying.
well, a friend of mine
Give it
told me
time. Give it
I'm a
time.
humanist, not a racist, because I hate all people equally. So I'm a humanist.
No.
Vinesh,
but
you know what I'm saying?
You
Give it
literally,
time.
you are
The
definitely
feminist
not a
movement,
humanist.
the feminist movement started positive too, and it ended up in a let's hate men thing. You know what I mean? So I'm saying let's just give it time. The womanist
Yeah,
thing will
because-
turn too.
Because
people are
men,
just how they are.
think that they know it all and then they want to use that to control everybody.
I'm fine
I'm
with that
just
because I'm a
saying-
man. If I was a woman, I'd be with you on this thing, Vinesh. But unfortunately, I'm on the winning side, so I'm okay with that. I think
That's what you think. That's what you think.
If things change, then I'll be with you. Like I'll be like, I should have known.
No, but then you're
right
a
now,
hypocrite.
and
No. Then you're a hypocrite. And
No,
me and hypocrite don't say, you either stand
I'm
for
not a
something
hypocrite.
or you do not stand for something.
Sorry,
It's
my
like
brother. Were you
it's
born
like a-
saved? You were once
like-
a sinner and you got saved.
no.
Would you
It's
need
like
to
the
change
book
your
of
mind on
James.
something?
Wait, we need to end YouTube.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, man. All I'm saying is somebody